Hi, I'm Franklin, and this is Law School Strategy, How I Graduated from Law School with a Job. How I Graduated from Law School with a Job is a series of interviews with practicing attorneys and legal professionals to find out more about their career journey. The purpose is for you to hear about how other legal professionals became employed and started their career following law school, or in some cases, relaunched their careers at a later stage in their professional life. It's not just young lawyers that we'll be talking with, but attorneys across all levels of experience and practice areas. The purpose isn't to try and prove the legal job market is perfect, because it's not, or convince you it's easy to get a job and there are a ton of jobs out there, because there aren't. However, I do hope you gain some insights, ideas, tips, or other pieces of advice that can help you and your law school strategy. Because I do believe that if you work hard, follow the advice that we share, you'll be closer than ever to graduating from law school with a job. On this episode, we have attorney Anna Romanskaya from San Diego, California. Hi, Anna.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining. So I'll kick it off with the first question. Why did you go to law school, and what did you do leading up to law school?
To answer the first question, why I went to law school, I went to law school in 2004, before the economy took a downturn. So the economy was strong, and I went into law school thinking I can be whatever I wanted to be with a law degree. So I was not someone who wanted to be an attorney since I was 5. To me, it was more of a practical decision. I went straight from undergrad. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do some type of advocacy, and law school seemed like the most practical choice at the time. So that was my motivation for going to law school. In terms of what I did before law school, I was an undergrad, so I'm one of those that went straight through. So I started law school when I was 21.
Wonderful. Did you do anything to prepare for law school while you were in undergrad? Any classes or anything like that?
So I was a double major in my undergraduate. I went to UC Santa Barbara, and I double majored in political science and law and society, which is essentially the sociology of law. Not as a pre-law major by any means. Like I said, I didn't really any desire expectations to go to law school until I was probably in my junior year and had my freak out moment of, oh my God, I'm graduating. What am I going to do with my life? But so that actually propelled me to even consider law school, because a lot of my classmates were looking at either grad school or law school, and like I said, didn't really know what I wanted to do at that time. So I thought law school was the more practical choice.
Wonderful.
And actually, in retrospect, the classes that I took as part of my majors, they didn't directly prepare me for law school, but they helped give me a context and a foundation.
Great, yeah, because I've talked to some people before that did something along the lines of a pre-law program or anything like that. So it kind of sounds like your courses related to law, but not necessarily a pre-law school program. Is that correct?
Yes, very much so. It was kind of a sociological perspective of how the law applies to society and how it could be utilized, which was, for me, an important context in law school, considering I went straight from undergrad, so I didn't really have work experience. I didn't really have a context to put everything that I was learning in law school into, and so it was good to have a background, kind of a sociological perspective.
Perfect. So now the question that everybody wants to know, did you graduate from law school with a job? And if so, how did you do it?
So this is an interesting question. So I graduated law school in 2007. And 2007 was the year where the economy hit the tanker. So I went into the bar exam. I took the July 2007 bar exam, and I went into the bar exam with a job. I was a law clerk at a family law firm, and I knew I wanted to continue doing family law. So I went in feeling very secure and, thinking, okay, I don't have to worry about it. I can just focus on the exam. So then I took the bar exam. I took 2 weeks off to do some traveling, and then I came back to learn that I no longer had a job, because during the time when I was studying, structured and basically laid off all of their law clerks. So there were 5 of us, and three of us had just taken the exam. So I was in that lovely position of waiting for bar results and looking for a job, which is a really, really scary place to be. So I got myself off the ground and basically focused my job search. I identified what area of law I wanted to go into. I knew I wanted to do family law. So I really targeted my job search on that. And what I ended up doing was I got really involved in my county bar association. We had a young lawyers division, so I got involved in that. I got involved in just other aspects of the community. Another strategy that I took was I went through the county bar, I looked at the family law section, and I literally reached out to every single member of that section. And I reached out to them basically asking them if they would be willing to go out for coffee, if I can watch them in action, if I can observe some of their cases. I didn't say, hi, I need a job. It was more of, hi, can I talk to you? Can you give me some perspective about the practice? Do you have any feedback for me? And I basically made that my job. I met a lot of people, and I learned a lot about the practice. And interestingly enough, I ended up finding my law firm, which I'm still with today. Now I'm a partner at my firm, through an ad on Craigslist, which was out of the blue, even though I did all this networking and all this outreach. So you kind of never know where an opportunity might come up. But I will say, when I found my job and I went in for the interview, they were looking for someone who was 3 to 5 years out. I was about 2 weeks old. I had just passed the bar. I just got sworn in. And I was literally 2 weeks, and I applied. I had the opportunity to interview. And my sales pitch to my firm that ultimately hired me was, I have all these connections. I'm involved in all these different organizations, and I will bring you business. Because ultimately that's the crust of it, is because of the network that I've developed as a result of my job search and just my engagement in law school overall, I came to the table, maybe not having the level of experience they were looking for, but being able to sell myself and say, I'm going to bring you business, which I ultimately did.
That's amazing. I love hearing, you mentioned Craigslist, first of all, and then you also mentioned networking through your local bar association, just getting out there, not just straight up asking for a job, but actually networking and creating some type of relationship. And that's so important. And going back to Craigslist, again, like I hear the same thing over and over. It's shock, but that's where so many people, so many young attorneys are actually finding job postings. And so that's amazing to hear that yet again. So let's back up just a little bit. I want to go back to what you did during law school, because you did have an offer and you did have an opportunity that you were prepared to go right into right after the bar exam. Unfortunately, it was economics that made it not follow through. But so going back to law school, what did you do during law school? What were you involved in? What student organizations or what local bar associations? What did you do to network during law school?
So when I was in law school, I became really involved in the Public Interest Law Foundation, PILF, at our school. And, interestingly for me, I didn't go into it with the idea of needing to network. That wasn't my mind frame. To me, it was more of, okay, law school is really hard. All of this material is just, I didn't really feel connected. And getting involved in a student organization was sort of like my post, my shining light to continue the academic side. So the mind frame that I went in was a little bit different, but nevertheless, getting involved in the student organization, I was president of the student organization. It gave me the ability to learn leadership skills and management, which I utilize today, even so in my practice, let alone all my other leadership endeavors. But it also gave me the opportunity to connect with practitioners in the community, because Public Interest Law Foundation, among some of its activities, puts on panels about alternative career paths and different ways of using your law degree, particularly in the public sector. And so that allowed me, by putting programs in that context together, to meet individuals in the community, and kind of gave me an opportunity to get outside of just the classroom and the law school world, which, we get very, our purview is like a box when we're in law school, because we live and breathe studying. So that was the first opportunity to really get exposed to the community. And that was my launching pad after law school to leverage the connections that I made as a result to ultimately help me, not just with my career search, but with my client building as well. So that was something that I got engaged in school. Outside of school, I got involved with the American Bar Association in my second year of law school. The ABA has a law student division that you can get engaged in. And it's interesting for those of you wondering, well, I didn't know you can get involved in the ABA. You're like me. When I first heard of the ABA, it's that entity that accredits my law school. You know, I didn't really know that it's an actual association you can join, let alone get involved in. So I went to an event that was put on by the ABA in my community and got exposed to it. So it became a really great opportunity because it's national to meet like-minded people who are outside of our little vacuum, to also expand my development that, you know, has really influenced the type of, and really the type of person that I am today, you know, almost 10 years out in the practice.
That's amazing to hear. Yeah, I love that you mentioned the ABA. And unfortunately, when you and I were in law school, we had to pay to join, but now law students get it for free, which is even better, I think. So there's really no excuse.
Amazing resource. Amazing resource. And I will tell you, you know, when you're thinking particularly, regardless of whether you're in your first year or in your third year, about a career path and how to distinguish yourself, whether it's to a potential employer or potential client, you have to be able to show what I call your distinguishing factor, what sets you apart. And engagement on the national level, especially if you have opportunities to lead, to take on leadership positions or create programs or events. And ultimately, as you matriculate out of law school and then become a young lawyer, an opportunity speaking to national publication is going to make you stand out. And you have to think about that since day one. The reality is it's very competitive out there, and you have to figure out how you're going to distinguish yourself beyond just the fact that you're ultimately going to graduate from law school and that bar card.
Exactly. So if we can back up just a little bit again, I want to walk through each of your years of law school. What did you do in terms of internships or clerkships? You mentioned that at the end of your 3L year, you had been clerking with a family law firm, but kind of back up a little bit and walk us through what you did for internships and the like throughout each year of law school.
So my first year, I was really lost. I'm not gonna downplay it. It was a really, really challenging year. I came in, like I said, I had no idea what I was getting myself into, and it was really academically challenging. So my first year, you know, I like they tell you all now, you're encouraged not to work because you want to focus on your studies. So I took that advice and was absolutely miserable as a result of it, because I've always either volunteered or worked. So, you know, trying to kind of navigate that shift. At the end of my first year is when my first year I was looking for summer internship opportunities. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do some type of advocacy. I was interested in crisis intervention type work because that's my background. So I identified kind of the family law context because it was the only thing that seemed interesting to me at the time, and specifically doing domestic violence work. So I looked at the nonprofit world, and I went to an internship fair. So I went to law school in San Diego, and UCLA in Los Angeles has a pretty large public interest internship fair that they put on in the spring semester. And so I went up to LA and went to the internship fair, and kind of long story short, was able to find an organization that of interest to me. So I ended up having an internship over the summer between my first and second year in a nonprofit organization doing domestic violence restraining orders. And that was kind of my launching pad into the family law arena. And so after I finished off that internship, into my second year, I came back to San Diego and basically just did a search for similar type of nonprofit organizations in San Diego that I can do similar work. And I found an organization that also assisted victims of domestic violence and sexual assault, a legal clinic, and was able to get that internship secured. And about halfway, I would say about halfway through my second year of law school, I had another one of those, oh my God, I'm graduating next year moments. What am I going to do with my life? And figure out what it's like to work at a law firm. I didn't really have an interest to go into the DA's office or do criminal work. I didn't really have an interest in clerking for a judge. It wasn't something that I gravitated towards, so I didn't even look into those opportunities, frankly. But I did acknowledge that I should probably learn what it's like to work in the private sector, because all my experience has been in the public sector and nonprofit. So through my internship here in San Diego doing the domestic violence work, identify a family law firm who was looking for law clerk opportunities. So through the connections, through my internship, I was able to kind of get an in to interview for the law clerk position. So ultimately, I got the law clerk position at the end of my second year, and then worked at the family law firm the summer before my third year and the entirety of my third year at that family law firm. Kind of my experience, while at the same time being really involved on campus with the Public Interest Law Foundation. So between those two is what took up my time.
I think it's kind of important what you mentioned about how you didn't just stick to going nonprofit after nonprofit. You kind of rounded yourself out with a little more law firm experience. I think that's something a lot of law students forget. They kind of find a niche and then they just get there and they stay there. And one of the things I try to encourage is to highlight 4 different areas. So get with a law firm, get with a nonprofit or a public sector environment, and then get with a government entity or a clerkship of some kind with a judge, and then also in-house if possible, just so you can round yourself out and get all that different experience. So it's great to hear that you did that and found success in that. So can you highlight what were some of the things you learned? What would you be without having that law firm experience? Do you think it rounded you out a little more?
Oh, very much so, because in my nonprofit experience in the internship, it was this very small sector of the practice. So doing domestic violence, doing restraining orders, it was a very specific sort of niche space with kind of generally speaking, a particular type of demographic. Going into the law firm, I really got exposed to the more general practice. So like I said, my concentration is family law, but this applies to civil or criminal, or whether you're interested in property or personal injury. In the law firm context, when you're dealing with private cases, number one, on a practical level, I learned how to bill for my time in the bill. It's just, you're dealing with kind of a specific type of population. In the private sector, you have to account for your time. So I learned how to do that. Also, other kind of practical matters, you're looking at bigger issues. So in the context of, let's say in the family law world, a divorce proceeding, instead of just dealing with the domestic violence aspect of it, you're dealing with everything that the divorce process would entail. So you're dealing with support issues, you're dealing with child custody issues, you're dealing with property division, which is a lot more expansive and things that I wouldn't in my internship through the nonprofit world. So, and that was the reason that I ultimately get some law firm experience, so I know what the word discovery means in a practical sense, how to apply civil procedure, all these things that we learn in the classroom that you don't really have the ability to learn on a practical level unless you are out in the field, which, you ultimately need to practice, whether you go into a law firm setting, whether you go into the public sector, or you go into, practice on your own.
Perfect. So earlier on, you mentioned that you you've utilized your bar association memberships and your involvement in networking events like that to kind of build up some referrals and get clients through your networking initiatives. So can you talk in terms of being in something like family law, how that works on the national level with an association like the ABA, when you might be compared to something maybe like on the federal level. So if you're dealing with intellectual property or if you're dealing with immigration, how do the referrals work in that sense if something's outside of your bar association area?
So I guess kind of to generally respond in terms of referrals and obtain. So I'm obviously in the private sector, so I have private clients. It's a bit of a different, I think, consideration if you work for the government, right? And you don't have to worry about getting clients. But for me, my number one source of referrals, hands down, is other lawyers. So my clients, my referrals come to me from others who do what I do, or they're in a different jurisdiction than I am. So whether it's family law or otherwise, I've kind of positioned myself to be the go-to person for any legal needs. That is the number one way of meeting other attorneys, other practitioners, is by involvement in my legal community. So that's one aspect of it, right? Because even though I'm not going out there and say, hi, trust me, I'm a brilliant lawyer, send me clients, the fact that I sit on committees, the fact boards with my colleagues is, especially as a young lawyer, as you're starting out, is what gives you credibility. Because other attorneys or even other professionals may not be able to see the type of product that I put out or my style, because they may not need my services and they may have not individually hired me to see it. But by being able to sit on a committee or work on a project together, they see my work ethic, they see my level of responsiveness, they see what's important to me, how I interact. Ability to kind of be in that context together is what allows them to then vouch for me and refer me as an attorney to either their client or their family member or just in general. So that's one aspect of it. The other element in terms of kind of more generally speaking, the business development side, not every type of community engagement is going to yield the dollar for dollar return, right? So, I'm not going to be able to, let's say, go into a networking mixer and then come out of there with 5 referrals, right? I mean, maybe if you're kind of in a perfect world, but more likely than not, that's not going to happen. So what you're really doing is you're building goodwill, and you're building, it's essentially an investment. I might meet someone today in a networking event, and then they might remember me 5 years down the road. And being almost 10 years into the practice, I can tell you that as a fact, because individuals that I've met when I was starting out still remember me and send me clients today, both on the local and on the national level. So, sometimes it may feel like you're out and about and you're doing all of these events and you're giving up your time. It really does pay back. And the other aspect of it is, for those of you out there who might be considering the public sector and thinking, well, I don't need traditional referral, so why should I bother networking? Is building yourself as an individual, as a professional, and your work style by being able to work in the committee setting, in the group setting, that's ultimately going to impact the way you practice and handle your cases.
Great. So we're almost out of time here, so I've got 2 more questions for you to wrap up. Were there any times that you struggled or faced any challenges during law school, and how did you overcome those?
Challenges in law school. Kind of going back to my earlier comments about my first year in law school. So like I said, I went into law school not really having desire or aspirations to actually practice. I went in because I thought it was kind of more practical, and I wanted to do advocacy, which is, it's like saying, hi, the sky is blue. My first year was really challenging. I didn't really connect with the materials. I didn't really see myself doing any of it as a practical matter, and that was really challenging for me. My grades, as a result, really suffered. It was the first time in my academic career where I was, earning grades that were below average, and ultimately found myself on an academic probation. The law school that I went to had a rate. So if you didn't meet your GPA requirement by the end of your first year, you were out. So I was very, very close to that after my first below the GPA requirement. So it was a very scary time. And, for me, I needed something to motivate me, to give me that tunnel. And getting involved in the student organization, the Public Interest Law Foundation, because it gave me a purpose, and it gave me it opened up my eyes of what opportunities there are outside of sort of your traditional, particularly with what we were learning in our first year, your contracts, your torts, and all of that. So that was my motivation. That I made peace with the fact that I'm not going to be the best student. I'm not going to, going to go in Amdrian, but I knew that I didn't, that was okay for me, because to get more active in the community to do this. I'm now almost 3 years ago at my firm, and I am very privileged to have held a number of leadership positions in bar associations, including with the ABA, which is the Young Lawyers Division. You can be at your low, but else, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, and I truly believe that those are the things that make you stronger.
Absolutely. That's amazing advice and a great story, and love to see the success that has come out of your career so far. Well, thank you so much, Anna, for taking the time today to talk and share some great insights and some stories and just some all-around great advice. We really appreciate it.
Definitely. My pleasure.
And thank you for watching, and make sure you subscribe for future episodes of How I Graduated from Law School with a Job. See you next time.